Good evening and welcome to the Multnomah Neighborhood Association Board meeting for the month of December. It's December 6th, 2022 at 7 o'clock. And we have a quorum of the board. Tad and Julie are here. Beth is not. And we also have Will Fuller and Patrick Burnett representing safety. Will representing and his committees as well as a committee chair. Equity and communications. So let's see here. First on the agenda is the board motion that we discussed at the last board meeting is available in the folder, in the Google folder, public folder. And we have referenced it in an email to the membership in yesterday's messenger, and thanks to Will. So they have, so they know what we know as far as we've given notice of the proposal of the board motion. And so plan is just to have it under new business, first thing under new business, and we'll have to do some credentialing, of course, before the meeting, but yeah, have a vote on the board motion from there, and then we can go from there as far as filing the new articles of incorporation, and then onward and upward with the bylaws.
I had a question about the one when I looked at the form for the motion. It shows there's a registry number for the state that was blank on the form. Do we keep the same registry number we have now, or is it changed? Because it's be the same organization, I think.
Boy, that's a good question. I'm assuming that it would.
Because we're not changing a corporation. We are still a corporation under the state. We just are changing fiscal sponsorship. And in the federal basis, we are registering as a 501c3 independent organization, but I don't know what the state does. We are considered a domestic nonprofit with our own state registry number, independent of Sweeney. I know that. But
well, that sense of, yeah, I really can't. I honestly cannot answer that question. Okay. We'd have to learn more, but I don't think either way would be a deal breaker as far as us going forward with this.
No. The other part for that, I know this is I consider it a fairly technical change. We've minimized the articles of corporation to the bare minimum, which means we are free to move with a robust bylaws, which obviously need to be dealt with. There's a time press for the grant that Corinne submitted for the street paintings, that we have to be a 501c within some number of days after December 16th if we get one of the grants. And I'm not sure what. I do know that our current bylaws, inadequate though they are, does have a statement that we will do nothing that is inconsistent with a 501c3. So as far as being within the boundaries, we've stated that explicitly. And if we had to go with the current bylaws in order to get the 501c3 in time for the grant, that gets really doesn't have to be dealt with until after the 16th when we know whether we got the grant or not.
I think the biggest problem with the grant was wasn't it mostly having a location to put it into?
I mean, which streets to use, you mean?
Which bank account we had to open a bank account under the new status.
Yeah. Well, I think we can open a bank account even if we're not a 501c3. I understand it's just that we can't give people tax deductions for the money put in the bank. That was my understanding from Jim. Was our last time we talked to Leah. I thought that's what she said we could do. We can set up a bank account. We have the federal ID number. We have a state ID number. We have status. All we don't have is the certification as a 501c3. Putting in the form, I think it's a 1023 or whatever it is. I think Corinne did some research. You all may have done too.
Well, I think that all I can say is that these are issues that should need to be brought up in the subcommittees. I mean, because the 501c3, you're talking about stuff about the 501c3, and the ad hoc committee should be making a recommendation to the
Oh,
board about which way to
absolutely.
go to that.
I'm just speaking,
Same thing with the bylaws.
yeah, I'm speaking to you and Tad as members of the subcommittee and informing the board that this is something we, as a consideration in how we proceed. If we had to do some emergency thing moving forward and then revise the bylaws, because I don't want us to rush into revising the bylaws. But that's up to you.
I
right?
don't want
It's-
to, well, I don't think the bylaws, there is a rush needed. I mean, I understand your concern about what the grant is all about, but even,
Oh, no,
I mean, I don't want to rush it. We need to have some sincere premeditation, and it has to be voted on by the membership and yada, yada. We've got to be able to explain it. The
exactly.
changes, the rationale for the changes. So
The main concern is the grant. If we wound up losing several $1,000s of grant money for a pretty good project on some technicality, that'd be kind of awkward. Because we can always go back and refile bylaws.
there were two grants. What are we talking about? We're talking about, there was one of two grants. One was just a couple of $100s, and that's what started the initiative to get the bank account a couple months
Right.
ago. And then this other one, are you talking about the painting of the intersections?
Painting of the
grant?
intersections, right. She put it in for, I think, $4,900, if I remember. This is to the Civic Life and or to the city. And I think they're going to be awarding the grants December 16th, if I remember.
Well, we'll have to figure that out. We'll have to think about that.
Yeah.
Tad, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm in agreement with you. I haven't heard any reason that we need to rush this. And as far as voting on the new bylaws is concerned, we have to put a month in between presenting them and voting on them, just as we are doing right now with the articles.
Yes, the time press is not with the bylaws, it's with the grant. We have to be a 501c3 before we can actually expend the grant money,
Well,
according to Leah.
Okay.
I mean, and the real question here that Will's bringing up is the old bylaws going to affect our 501c3 status in any way when it comes to this grant? And I don't think it does, because
No,
we're filing for the 501c3 status as a separate gig, regardless of whether we're keeping the old number or having a new number.
Yeah.
And so by the time the filing of the 501c3 should be done in the month, this month, after we make the bylaw change, or pardon me.
Yeah. Well, this is something
So
I
that
think
very
we have
next
to,
day, after it's voted on, if knock on wood, it's voted on by the membership and approved, we file the AOI, the new AOI,
okay,
file
Peter.
for the 501c3 status.
Yeah, I don't know. I forget. I haven't looked at it lately. At this, again, I'm leaving that up to the subcommittee to do. I'm just aware that if we had to do it to get the grant. Also, I don't know. Well, the idea was to have new bylaws to go with the new status. But if we had to have the new status before we can do the bylaws, I would say you would probably want to go. The other question would be, what sort of notice and discussion do we need with the membership for the changing the 501 to 501c3? Because that's a more major step than changing the articles, in my view. It does affect our relationship with Sweeney positively. I don't see any reason we have to break a relationship with Sweeney. We just don't have to have them as a fiscal sponsor. And we can do other things a lot of other things we can do as our own organization, financially, particularly. And, but it's just aware.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, let's face it, everything that we do, every step that we move forward toward, I feel, our desired goal of becoming a 501c3 has to be approved by the membership.
Right.
So, given that we're going to have a certain amount of delay, quite frankly, if you really want to get technical, we can't file unless we could file as am I hearing that we cannot file as a 501c3 after the AOI is filed until we get the general membership to allow us to?
I think every decision has to go through the membership. I'm not sure whether we have to, but as I read our bylaws, it says, Tad, you guys know more. You've looked at it more closely than I have, but I thought
I'm just
anything
that's why I'm
we
asking
did.
Chad.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
We have, don't we, if for us to, after we get the AOI filed, the new file, let's say that we get it approved.
Yeah.
For us to file as a 501c3, changing our status, that decision had approval of that has to go to the membership. Be voted on and approved by the membership.
Approval of what specifically?
Us turning our organization into a 501c3.
Oh,
Filing us.
yeah, I would think that would be the kind of thing that we need membership approval for.
All right, so then what we need to do is, as a board, is be ready to vote on that, to do another board motion, have a board motion ready in January, for January's meeting.
I agree. Also have a discussion of it at our December meeting. So the members
We'll
are
have an
alerted
opportunity
to.
to talk about it, but
Yeah.
let me finish this thought, please. Well,
Yes, sir.
so we have to put a board motion out, like what we did with this one for the articles of incorporation. And we have to do it for the purpose of the filing of the new filing tax status.
Mhm.
Peter, you're familiar with this. Patrick, Julie, I'd love your thoughts on all of this.
I was just looking online at the various things on the web about this, and you probably know all this already, or the committee, but there's a 1023 form to file with the IRS, and apparently that can take weeks or months to approve. It's not hard. I don't think it's hard. It's relatively simple in concept, but there's delays in waiting for things to get approved. The street painting, is that limited to 501c3s, or?
Yes,
It is. Wow.
that's according to Leah.
And the deadline for that it's coming up on this.
Well, what she said was they would be making a decision, I believe, on who gets one on the 16th of this month. But you don't have to have the 501c3 in place immediately. It has to be in the works or somewhere. I don't know. It'd be up to her. So that's a city decision. That's the grantor's decision as to who qualifies.
Well, one good thing one thing we have in our favor is that we've been in communication with Leah Fisher about the circumstance, the concept of turning into a 501c3. Matter of fact, Peter is scheduling a meeting with her and I and him as the bylaws ad hoc to talk about, learn what she knows, get her input on how other NAs are doing this and how their setup of their bylaws. And I think that's extremely prudent. We'll need to bring that back to the board, what we learned there as we go through this.
Yeah.
But fortunately, we're not having to deal with bylaws next
No,
month.
we don't have to deal with bylaws.
But
I think so. It's prudent to talk with her about this very issue, clarify what's the deal with the grant, and I think put an agenda item on the general meeting for December as equivalent to a first reading of the move to be a 501c3, so people could have input or at least awareness.
Oh, and also just to take care of this item too. I'm jumping ahead, but I'm getting it out of the meeting way, but off of the agenda, and that is there was a training coming up on the 7th, that nonprofit board roles and responsibilities being conducted by Central Northwest Neighbors, a similar Sweeney Coalition group. And I'm going to attend that. They did one last month on the bylaws, and we missed that. We may get a video to that. And if we do get a video to that, I'll make sure that everybody can get a copy of that to watch it, and just for your edification,
Sure.
and
Cool.
also to see how we've got to, how we're gonna have to set this up. I mean, I don't, it's not an overly complicated thing to file this, but we've just got to be able to learn how to do it. I get the feeling it's going to be as simple as submitting a form, but we'll find out.
Yeah, these are all good things. Yes, it's all good stuff.
Pat is correct that it's not a complicated process to apply for a 501c3. And I think probably we have a lot of the components already in place by the nature of how the M&A is already working, or at least through Sweeney. But Pat is also right that this takes a long time. It could take as much as a year to get approval from the IRS.
And that makes sense. I remember I did, and the saving grace is that we keep the city in the loop on our intention. Maybe we can work out that little exception that you were talking about there, Will, as far as making sure that we get this grant and still qualify for it. Because I think that her idea of doing that, I think that's solid. That's a great idea.
And if we don't get the grant, that part is moot, but we just want to have our ducks in a row.
Exactly.
Is this
All right.
is this the grant that Corinne submitted for street painting?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it sets us up for other stuff too. We're going to have so many options as a 501c3. I really, for fundraising, for civic participation, for for interactions with the city.
Mm-hmm.
It's what they've been kind of pushing us to do, but it's all good. Any last thoughts?
I think Kat is right that this is a decision that the general membership needs to approve, and but I don't know whether we can have a draft application of, what's the number, Pat? 2308 or something?
1023 is, I think is what I saw.
1023. I mean, can we have a draft of that by the general meeting? Perhaps not.
And that's an application, a 501c3 application that you're referencing there, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm just going back online here.
A motion to this effect.
Yeah.
Sounds like yes or no. Do we want to be a 501c3 or not? Is there more to that motion than that?
Oh, good point.
No.
We don't have to have an application for their approval. We just need a yay or nay on whether we move
because
forward.
there aren't a lot of options to 501c3. We're just enhancing what we're doing and making all of their donations tax deductible as a result.
Mm-hmm. And send your check before the end of the year, please.
Giving us independent legitimacy with other
Right.
people, specifically the city where Sweeney is still persona non grata.
Restate what you just said so succinctly.
Me?
A motion, what would that motion
Oh.
say?
Well, this would be a motion from the board to apply for and seek 501c3 status.
Shall the MNA apply for?
Yes. 501c3 status from the Internal Revenue Service.
Right.
I wrote it down.
Thank
It
you.
is a
Secretary.
big deal and wouldn't be inappropriate to put a month between presentation of the motion and voting on the motion, as with articles and bylaws. But we're talking about an enormous period of time anyway. So it's something that it could easily be presented next week and voted on in January.
So,
For articles and bylaws, one session pause or break, or how do you say that? The voting should occur on a subsequent general meeting?
Yeah, the or the way Robert's rules would put it is something to the effect of presented at one regular meeting, voted on at the next regular meeting, which in our case happens to be a month apart.
Continue.
How the M&A apply for a 501c3 status? File for. I'm just writing this down for myself as an agenda item for next month.
I've got
And,
one,
and I love that idea, just yes, no.
I've got one last process piece here from the website, and that is the application that we probably want is a 1023 EZ. It looks like the letters E and Z. It looks like that is for nonprofits that expect to receive less than $50,000 a year in annual gross receipts. So I think at least this year or next year we'll probably fall into that category. So apparently that's a streamlined or a shorter application than the full 1023.
And it may run more quickly. I think I sent that information to the subcommittee a while back, but anyway,
Okay.
it doesn't hurt to reiterate it.
Yeah. I figured you guys are already up on this.
Well, we need to put that into we should put that into the general meeting folder, Will, that so they can see that.
What to
here.
write, what to do the 1023?
I was just thinking maybe putting a copy of the form in there so they can see the form. Wait a minute, I'm just pulling it up myself real quick. Oh, come back, come on, show me.
Unmute, Will. Still
And
unmute, Will.
I'm muted. Basically, put into the folder whatever is relevant to the 501c3 application so the members are up to date on it or have the opportunity to be up to date. Not the people will read or having read will understand what's going on, but at least they have the chance, and some people definitely have an interest.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm getting sucked into an IRS website here.
Bad idea.
Totally, I was going down a
Abort.
side road. Okay, where am I at here? Okay, so we'll get a copy of that. Well, maybe if there is a form, maybe we can put it in there, but we certainly can just have the board, the notice of the motion draw on a sheet on a 8.5 by 11 in their review. Okay.
If we include the form, Moses, just a quick note, if we include the form, let's do just the form, which is only 8 pages, rather than the entire IRS instructions for the form, which is 23 pages.
I agree. That makes sense.
And then people can see really what the IRS is asking for, and,
They don't need to have all the deeds.
right.
Okay, so a copy of the motion, copy of the IRS form. Do we want to put anything in there? Ooh, here comes Corinne. We'll finish up and get her thoughts on what we're talking about specific to the grant. As soon as she comes. All right, and I'm just thinking of any substantiating info that we need to leave in the folder for the public in preparation of next week. I don't think really. Hi, Corinne.
Hey, hi, I'm in the car on the way home, but I'm just gonna listen in for a bit here.
Ah, very good. Well, we were just talking about you because we were talking about 501c3 status, and we were talking about how it is affecting the small grant situation. And we realized that for us to file as a 501c3, that we need to get it, make a board motion at the January, have a board motion submitted for a vote at the January meeting, whether or not giving us permission to apply for a 501c3 status. And so that's when we'll be able to, if they, once they approve that, then we'll be able to go forward, get it filed, and then we'll be able to comply or be in compliance, if you will, for the small grant requirement of a 501c3.
Be eligible.
Be eligible, that's the word I was looking for. So that's where your name came up, Corinne. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to have a board motion, basically shall the M&A apply for 501c3 status? Yes, no? So, okay, let me get back over here to the agenda here. That's where that stands. And we'll get a motion out okay. Next up, officer updates is what we're up next. I do not have an update except for everyone to be well this holiday season and stay warm. You know, that right there would make me very happy. Tad, has things changed on our financial front?
No. I'm told that nothing has changed, so we still have $615.38 spread out over the 3 accounts. But looking back, there was a reminder that the Oregon Department of Justice Form CT-12 was due on November 15th. And
I sent that off.
it is, okay.
Yeah,
And,
Lee Bueller
that-
got me to make sure.
It
sent it off.
costs $20, so I asked because I was surprised that that our account hadn't changed by $20.
I wasn't able to send a check. I didn't send it. No, I did send a check. I had to send it from a personal account. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Double check something. myself.
we'll perhaps see a change next month.
I sent that on 11/12, $20, the CT-12.
And you'll be
I'll need to read you
reimbursement.
Yeah, for $20 here soon, once you get it approved, or once we. It's all for, okay,
All right. Okay. That's
sounds good.
all I have.
All right, well, thank you. And Julie, how are we doing secretarially or documentation wise?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right on, thank you. And you're, just to give you credit where credit is due, I find myself referring to your notes a couple of times a month.
I've stopped. I'm like, it's painful to me, but I'm just like, I'm waiting for like everyone to kind of nod and I'll write something down, but it's like against my nature, but I'm doing my best.
Right on. Okay, next up, the subcommittees is going to be, I put them up first. We've talked about that upcoming meeting with Leah Fisher regarding, to pick her brain.
When is that?
We're not sure yet. We haven't set the dates. I was on the email thread that with Peter and Leah to get that started as part of the bylaws commit, the bylaw ad hoc. So we haven't firmed up a date yet, but when we do, Peter, I'm sure we can figure, who attendance.
Well, the next step, I communicated with Aaliyah today, and I was suggesting that she propose 2 or 3 dates, just assuming she had a busier schedule than we did. And she wrote back that we should propose a few dates. So the next step will be a doodle to the ad hoc committee members, for which I think I will need Amanda's email address, Moses.
Oh, yes, I'll forward that to you.
And I'm going to try to get this meeting before Christmas, but December is gradually descending its craziness on all of us already.
Yep, no, agreed. It's gonna be a strange one. And then, so we'll learn what we learned there. And I wish we need to, while we're talking about it, do we want to have another bylaw? Do we want to have another meeting regarding bylaws before the end of the year, or will the meeting with Leah be sufficient? And I address this to, I guess, to the other members of that committee, Peter and Tad.
Yeah,
Always ready to talk about bylaws, so. when-
you're cutting out, Ted. You were cutting out, Ted. We didn't catch what you were saying.
I'm ready to talk about bylaws when everyone else is ready to talk about.
Yeah.
Bylaws.
I think the next step is talking with Leah, and I think it'll be important for everybody in the ad hoc committee to be there, so they can ask any questions that may come up. But
Oh, I just realized. If next week we get approval of the Articles of Incorporation, that is one reason why the ad hoc committee meeting would meet. That's one thing we could talk about, because we have to figure out where to go from there, as far as that goes. But when it comes to that, the filing, it seems pretty. If they just file them Wednesday, does that make sense? To just, is that what we're needing? Is it that easy, Tad, to file those revised, that article, the new Articles of Incorporation?
It certainly appears to. I mean, they created the form. It's fill in and hit a button, pay $50.
Well, I may have to get a reimbursement for 70 versus 20, but I'll take care of that. I'll figure that all out next week.
submit your invoice in triplicate, Moses.
Okay,
With the officially approved form.
yeah, get the official stamp.
Yeah, we need a form committee.
Oh, God.
Have some breaking news. Raphael Warnock defeated Herschel Walker
Woohoo.
in Georgia.
I'll be damned.
Oh, gee.
My friends texted and made the mistake and flipped it. And I was like, what? And they were like, yay. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening right now.
What's the margin, Dad? What's the margin? Does it say?
Oh, it was 50.1 to 49.9 or something
Really?
Oh,
ridiculous.
my
Yeah.
goodness.
It's very tight.
No, all I got was the headline.
Wow.
It'll prove that voting matters.
Yeah.
Oh,
Everybody.
Here it is.
Sure.
Mr. Warnock had 50.55% to 49.45 for Mr. Walker. This from the Wall Street Journal.
Okay.
Crazy close. Well, luckily our neighborhood association elections weren't that crazy, so.
We have a stronger machine than they do in Georgia.
And looser hours of voting. Last but not least on those updates is the roles and responsibility meetings. I'll be going to that tomorrow night, that Zoom meeting. And if I can get his video for that, I'll share it with everyone. And then hopefully I can get a video of that bylaw one and I'll share it with everyone who you're welcome to review it, or just bylaws folks. Or
Yeah, Leah did tell me today that she's still working on getting a recording of
I
that
hope she's able
December
to.
meeting.
That'd be neat, Peter. That'd be real neat. I feel like we missed something there. Okay, transportation. Stefan wasn't here. Has an excused absence tonight. I do have some very good news though, so I'm going to steal his thunder and I'm going to report back of the success that the advocacy that we made, did in changing the detour route of the, okay, let me back up. We had our meeting last month with the ODOT representative about the I-5 Southwest 26th Bridge Replacement Project. One of the detour routes that they were recommending that they showed us at that meeting had traffic going all the way around and using Dolph Street as the detour route, even though it's residential, but they obviously had not been on it before. And we pushed back, Stefan pushed back, he questioned it, and really during the last meeting, you'll remember, we pushed back hard. Well, he also made it a point to share this information with our friends in Crestwood, where they also had a scheduled meeting the next week. And Marianne Fitzgerald, longtime transportation advocate, she was made aware of this, and she hit him hard too. And I guess last week we received notice that they have changed, thanked us, and they have changed the route, and it is no longer on Dolph Court. And it'll be, they used the logical one, the Hume Court, Barbara Boulevard to Hume Street, where the light is, the Chevron and the Lucius Clausius is going down that road. And it just made more sense. At least it's better set up for it. So a win for our advocacy, and it's a good example of what can happen when, and why we're here. If the neighborhood association hadn't seen that, our transportation person hadn't seen that, they would have kept it. And so a win is a win, and a good thing to report back. And Stefan made it a point to reach out to him and share that with him and thank him. Good stuff. Let's see here. Next week, he is also going to be, he's meeting with a PBOT representative this week let me see. Let me open up his email real quick. He'll send us an update for next week, before next meeting. I am meeting with PBOT tomorrow to discuss Capitol Highway, quote, activation. Not sure what he means by the word activation, but I'm assuming it has something to do with the construction project. And
I'm going to sit in on that meeting with Stefan tomorrow. He reached out to me for some community activation support on that one. So we're going to meet with some folks from PBOT tomorrow on that, and I'm sure he'll report back with it. But it's an active project. And I think the goal is to get people to use the new Capitol Highway infrastructure that they've just built, from what I can tell from the brief communication that I've had with Stefan about it. But he's been in touch with me, and he's very actively working with PBOT on it. So that's the only update that I have from Stefan on it, but I thought I'd just chime in while we're talking on the subject.
wow, he's pushing for use of the newly constructed of Capitol Highway versus going down side roads. That's cool. Interesting. Okay, so
If I get the gist of what we're talking about here, yes, I think that's the bulk of it.
it makes a lot
I'm
of sense.
just picking up on this call. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so that's what's up in transportation. Okay, communications. Will, I know we got the messenger out.
We got the messenger out. We've also got from Stefan again to follow up with the apartments about their issues in communications. I have not talked to Carolyn Devine for a while, so we should get in touch with her again. And the other thing I've been pursuing, I don't know if it's communications directly, but getting a place for the meetings to be in person. And Julie has possible place that might be, but also the Multnomah Center does charge $20 an hour, which is the in-house rate. I have not yet, but I need to talk to Leah Fisher and see if they have any ability to lower that, but I'm not holding my breath. And Sweeney, that's one of the things that you can ding the city for what Sweeney used to pay for. They paid that fee. They had to pay it, but we got as a neighborhood a free, nice meeting space with overhead projector and a bunch of stuff. So I'm pursuing that project. So we see if we can do January as a hybrid meeting or something, or a live meeting. And then generally, the connecting with the Multnomah Village Business Association is a communications thing. We do need, given that we go to a new independence, have the chance to rewrite, or redevelop the website. And I know Corinne will be very unhappy to see the website change, but that's the way it goes. You know, really, I would be delighted to see the website changed. And but that is a subset of a broader use of social media in general. Instagram, tweets, and so on and so forth. Facebook is I don't know whether we've solved the 2 Facebook page issue or not. It's not a biggie. It's kind of like the 2 Chinas, but it's there. And generally continuing to bring as many people in the neighborhood into the loop and aware of and active in, at least participating in hot issues so that they are part of the deal. Along those lines, this relates to communication, is how we structure the organization. Right now, we are member-centric, and that means everybody has to be there, which leaves us wide open to some interest group charging in on a special issue. It also implies that an active neighborhood association is everybody. If we go to what is the other value, which I think Leah will get into with us, a board-centric neighborhood association, the policy decisions are made by the board, subject to review by the membership in varying degrees of control. But generally speaking, letting the world know that we exist, letting our residents know we exist, and that we are fairly representing their interests is important. I think we've done a tremendously good job with the Southwest Village whole issue, because that was when we were treading a very thin line. There are still people that are unhappy with us and unhappy with the Southwest Village, but unless somebody's cooking up some coup in the background, we are not the target of ire that we were to begin with. And I think we have the solid majority of the actual members of the association, the residents, backing what we've done, which is kudos to Moses, who took a lot of flack, and other people who've been fighting the thing. Peter and the friends of the SRV, the way they hold the tone. It's not an advocacy group, it's a support group, and so on and so forth. We've done a great job, I think, of being a representative neighborhood association without trying to dictate one particular point of view. So kudos, and that's communication, basically.
Yeah. Good
Thank you,
stuff.
Will.
All right, well, you're up again, because I know that West Portland Town Center has also been in the news when it comes to.
Has been in the news. The city of Portland approved the West Portland Town Center plan on November the 30th. There were only 3, I think, members present, but the other 2 said we favor it. And the big deal there is that is an equity plan. My next move along those lines would be to get us more actively involved in it as a neighborhood association. I have held back on asking for membership in the Southwest Equity Coalition, and specifically for the West Portland Town Center, because it got muddied in with the SRV issue, and I wanted to have that out of the way. But that plan is a serious effort to overcome the de facto gentrification that takes place when new developments come in. And by serious, I mean, there's a lot of things yet to be dealt with. Funding is always an issue. Making it in practice, when you say, yes, your $1 million condo will be right next to this subsidized housing and you'll like it, and that sort of thing. But the fact that the city's backed it, we can back it, and really make a statement as Portland really does practice what it preaches. So that's a pretty cool project. Otherwise, I'm like Karina's checking in with Multnomah Village. I'm liaison with Multnomah Village Business Association's Equity Committee, which is kind of a dormant committee because the head person is doing other things. And just generally representing well, on one particular point that I learned about. Equity, as you may have seen in schools where people don't like kids being taught about institutional racism and so on, can be a really hot button these days. The way we have phrased our equity work, which is inclusive of everybody and is dealing with you all have a stake in the game, is very important to what I think is the true spirit of equity, which is very simply treating people right. And so I want to continue that tone. There were some specific instances I won't go into where I was shocked that a person I thought backed, but just hated the word institutional racism, the term, and the whole emphasis on race. So it's an area where we can shine as a neighborhood, and I think we've been doing a job there too. I can't take any kudos on that, really. We haven't done much specifically, but we've taken a stand, made a statement. Yeah. Corinne.
Do you mind if I say something real quick with that, Will? There has been multiple circumstances where I have used the foundation you have built with equity and inclusion in the state. Hold on, Evan, I'm talking. In the statement that you've put together in our community outreach work, like the ice cream social we did, Trader Joe's asked us to put together. They said, we're happy to donate, but please just give us a statement about who you are and what you stand for. And I was like, easy. Will has already built the foundation for what we stand for as a neighborhood association. And I used your equity and inclusion paragraph as our foundation of what we were asking for. And so I think that is, I'm so glad that we have that as we're starting to make this transition towards potentially putting ourselves in our own 501c3 and transitioning as a neighborhood association. When I put the grant proposal together, I used a lot of the framework that you had already put in place for us with equity and inclusion, because that is the foundation of how we're going to move forward. And so kudos to you, Will, for that, because that is how we will move forward as a neighborhood association. And without that foundation, we would still be floundering around a little bit in that area. And while we still have a lot to learn, I'm so glad that we have that. So I really appreciate that, because I've used it in multiple circumstances as we were building our community here with other organizations like the Business Association and neighboring and partnering businesses. So tons of value, and kudos to you. So thank you.
Right. Very good stuff. Well, I don't know how to transition from that. That's really solid stuff. Let's safety. Patrick. Would you like to talk a little bit about safety issues or safety committee things, some of the things that you've been working with?
Yeah, so nothing specific. I won't be at the meeting next week. That's why I was attending tonight. But I'll make sure that the invitation goes out to our local COP. I was thinking about sometime this winter, maybe January, having one of our firefighters come and give a talk about fire safety. How would you guys feel about that?
Awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, especially now when people use indoor heaters and people still have their Christmas lights up for a while. So I'll work on that. I don't think I'll be able to deliver for December. I'll try. If I can, I will. But, you know, I was disappointed that our cops couldn't show up last week. I don't know if that was just a one-off, but yeah. So I'll move forward with with fire safety, a representative from the fire department. I guess we're let's see, who are we? We Portland Fire.
Portland Fire, yeah.
Portland
And
Fire.
I may even have a referral for you.
Oh, please.
One of the our state representative, Dacia Graber, is a Portland firefighter.
Oh, wow.
And she's awesome, amazing gal. Anywho, if we asked her, I can give you her email address. You should ask her under that umbrella, under the firefighter umbrella. She would just immediately say yes. I know she would.
That would be great.
Be one of the few times that she's not talking state rep stuff. She's talking fire stuff.
And another thing, I happen to work for Underwriters Laboratories, UL, the safety certification electrical company, who has a large presence in Washington. I have plenty of safety advocates that if you wanted to talk about electrical safety, we could, if Patrick wanted to keep January to firefighter and exactly, those are really good things about the trees and the lights and heating, and you wanted me to find something more about, the dangers of why you don't plug a extension cord with another extension, or with whatever those things. I'm sorry, I'm getting over
Surge
flu right now.
protected.
Yeah, so if you wanted, I could find somebody quick that would be willing to spend 15 minutes and throw a couple of slides together, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Just tell me if you want it.
Okay. Well, let me make some progress tomorrow. And Moses, will you email me that person, or can I just go on her website, or is there a secret email that you have?
I think I may have a secret email. I might have her Gmail account. So let me double check that. And I'll send you, I'm writing that down here.
Okay, please. Julie, I'll email you as well and let you know what. I'd love to have that information. And
It's our jam.
Hmm?
It's our jam. It's what we do.
Our jam. I know you are UL. That's awesome. See,
Literally, our mission is making the world a safer place.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, you're on.
By coincidence, that is ours, isn't it? Okay, let's move on here. Okay, so that's it for committee updates. Thank you all. I'm making notes here. Old business. Let's go into some old business real quick. The holiday gala. Corinne, I am so sorry I missed that, or I would have volunteered for traffic duty. But did you have more than just you?
Well, barely me. That was kind of a last minute request, and I wish I was a little bit more involved with the business association and should have reached out to the board earlier. But I was not as in tune as I should have been with them. But they had enough volunteers. My neighbor, Will's neighbor, Lenore, you just have to be quiet, okay, stepped up and did the ornament decorating. So they had a, sorry, I've got an assistant here with me. They had an ornament decorating station. I'm gonna talk now, okay? Where Lenore and some of the other neighborhood partners sat in. I'm really sorry, you guys. And kids decorated ornaments, and then they hung them up on the fence behind Village Beads, which the long-term goal is to turn that into a more permanent, potentially like European London lock scene, where yeah, so it was kind of an intro or a test for that. And so some people hung them up, some people took them home. It was optional, and the intention is to leave them up there for a bit, just to see how it goes. There was hot chocolate out and about. The business association all reported great response from the community. I think it went really, really well from the business association perspective. They had enough volunteers to do traffic safety, but I think there.
You just got muted. Corinne, you just muted yourself. Try again.
Listen, I will try to be a better liaison between the neighborhood association and the business association. I'm partnering on stuff like that because they do need volunteers. Like I can show up and speak for the business association, but I can't bring the bodies that they need. And I think they needed more support. And I should have asked earlier for us to send an email out for crossing guards or something, but they pulled it together. But as a business association, their intent is to grow, and I think they've revitalized the events that were there before COVID. And I think they intend to kind of bring more life to them. And so I think the more partnership we can bring to them, the better. But it went really, really well. We went down there with our kids. We had a great time. We decorated some ornaments. We talked to a lot of the business owners. Finger Toys was jam-packed. I think they had people like letting people in when people came out because they were so full. And so I think people were really happy to be out and about. And
Where was that, Corinne?
At Thinker Toys.
Thinker Toys, yeah.
They got a bigger tree this year, which was a discussion in the meetings. It was like, can we do bigger than we've done in the past? So
Yeah.
at least got a bigger tree, and it was a little bit of a bigger event. There was a Santa Claus out there. I think it was everybody that we saw out and about was having a really, really good time. So, and everything I've heard from the business association so far has been really, really positive.
Yeah, just where and when was the tree decorating? Was that in the little plaza where the tree is?
Yeah, the tree, Nell from the community PDX store did the decorating, I think mainly on her own, and had it decorated beforehand. And then they turned the lights on at 6 p.m. on the holiday gala night. Getting pulled
Well,
on by my 4-year-old here, so I'm at my limits
Oh,
of what
you-
I got into me tonight.
You've been juggling well.
Yeah,
That's a cute. Can you serve on a committee?
he really needs me right now. He's really
Need
asking
a-
for more.
Okay, one last question then.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
one
Yeah,
last
yeah, no, we're
question.
good. Mhm.
Okay, small grant project.
Yes, yeah. So we submitted the application with, like I said earlier, I pulled a lot of what Will had put together for our equity and inclusion and diversity section. We worked with Leah, Pam and I met with Leah and talked through the application and built a really strong proposal. Leah felt it was really strong. Our only weakness, I think, is that we're not technically a 501c3. Part of the rules are you can apply without a 501c3, but you have to have that status to receive the money. But I subtly implied that the business association may sponsor us if we don't get there, but our goal is to get there by early January or by January, February, kind of early spring timeframe is kind of what I outlined in the application. And from what I've heard, we should know within a week or two if we get approved. And so whatever news we hear back, I have December 14th on my calendar. I'm not sure how accurate that is, if it's in and around that date, but as soon as we get approved, I'll let everybody know one way or the other. And in our proposal, it's a vague like placemaking project with the goal of a couple of intersections and possibly a mural in the village. So using the business association and the very high traffic foot areas, pedestrian areas is where we're targeting. And then within that, we have some flexibility. Like if we get pushback from PBOT on a certain area and we can't use that intersection, then we could move the project to another location. So as long as we get the funding, we have some flexibility in our neighborhood.
Very good.
So fingers crossed. I'll keep you guys posted. Hopefully I'll hear back one way or the other by the end of next week, I would hope.
Very cool. It sounds like it's all in synchronicity, especially in relation to our 501c3 status.
Yes, and with that said, I will just put a quick plug in. Pam and I think are essentially co-leaders of this project, but both have 2 kids at home, other commitments, but I think have full intentions to lead it, but we'll need a lot of help. If we get approved for this, it will be a very big project for the neighborhood. And if we get approved for the grant, it has to be used by the end of like September. And so we are committing to doing the project. And so it wants to hit as soon as we find out in December, I'll let everybody know. But like if we get it come January, we are going to move forward pretty aggressively and going to need lots of community help.
Well, we'll promote the heck out of it on our end, you know, through the email, through the website, through all that fun stuff, the Sweeney newsletter. We'll
Yeah.
get you volunteers.
Yeah, we'll need lots of help with it for sure. And fingers crossed again that we get it. And then again, on the other side of that is that the Business Association is definitely interested in our support and partnership on the parade. So that's another big project that we haven't committed to, but have definitely put our names in as like, hey, we're here to help with the parade. We really want it to happen. And so if this grant happens, we're also going to need a huge amount of support for parade for the Business Association and for our neighborhood too. So just plugging those 2 things as we move forward into like come January, both of those things are going to be pretty big priorities.
You know,
Hey,
it's
Corinne,
interesting.
before you were able to join this call, we were talking about how long it could take to get 501c3 status. It can take 6, 8, 10 months, 12, a year. So I think it would behoove us to make sure that we let the business association know that we may need them to act as our fiscal sponsor. That's something.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't think that I had anticipated it taking that long to get it. I think when, like in discussions with Will and Moses and I, we thought maybe it wouldn't take as long, but because within the grant application, we included the Business Association mural as part of the project, and I looped them in on it. I think that they would be willing to take us on as they could own that part of the proposal and at least we could put the funding towards them, and then we could use their 501c3 status to move forward with this project?
I think they may be, this is something that we need to research, but I think the Business Association is not a 501, it's not a C3. I think it's a C5 or C6.
C5, 6, I believe, yeah, that's what they may not be able to do.
They may not be able
Okay.
to sponsor us.
Let's
Okay,
cross
that's
that
good to
bridge
know.
when we get to it.
Yeah,
get the
we will.
grant, and then we see where we go with the 501c3.
Yeah.
It
Sounds
may be
good.
the easy is quicker than the full one as well.
And I get the sneaky suspicion because of the easy status of that being under 550K and less, that it's going to be approved at least temporarily. I know that like as an employer, when I get a file to get an EIN, an employee ID number, I get it as soon as I file. And then they go back and they, if there's any need to verify information, you get that verified, but you have that number, like what we did with getting our EIN to get the bank account. So I'm hopeful, but cross our fingers, we'll find out that we won't have that long of a delay for official approval, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I hope so too. But yeah, hopefully we'll know more one way or the other on the grant in the next 10 days or so, I hope.
Okay.
One comment about when these things that imply lots of people getting involved. There's one part of the communications thing I forgot to mention is developing some sort of a status of an active member of the neighborhood association, somebody you can call on for special projects like this, rather than depending on us few and then the bandwidth is too small. And I'm taking on some effort along that line, just to put a marker for that we can do that.
Yeah, I also see of this as serving recruiting as double-edged recruitment. It's recruitment towards the participation in the association, but it's recruitment for our activities, and one feeds the other. The more activities that we have, the more reasons for people to get involved. And so I think that, between the parade, between this mural, between the, over the next 6 months, we've got to give people reasons to get involved in the neighborhood association. And these are two of them that we're talking about right now. Because the more the merrier.
And I think this is a legitimate conversation, another conversation to have with the Business Association.
Amen.
They need neighbors to volunteer, and we need businesses to volunteer. And we've had a lot of good successes with the Friends of Safe Rest Village. And I just see this as an opportunity to keep working on strengthening our cross-pollination here.
Yeah, I agree. Best case, not best case scenario, but I'd love to see maybe a business association member get active on our board or get active in our committees. Maybe we might have to create a new committee specific to, business, or I don't know.
And
But
we
that's
might,
just
they invite us, or like, I think myself and Will are invited to their planning meetings. At least we're on those emails, I believe. I think if
Good.
there's, it would be pretty easy to open up that door, and maybe we start with having a meeting, like a small one-off meeting with Peter and Nell, the president and the vice president of the Business Association, on how we can move forward and collaborate and put a little structure around it.
I like that, Corinne.
Yeah, I think it's, I think there's tons of potential there. I think we can
You and I
both
should
lean
have
on
a
each
side.
other.
Yeah, you and I should have a side conversation and try to set something up where I as chair meet with the guy and,
Yeah,
and then.
Yeah.
we can
yeah. And I
blossom
think,
there.
at post holidays, pre-Earth Day, because they're going to do another Earth Day event. We'll probably do another Solve event, that kind of stuff. And so I think in between that window, when they're done with the holiday rush and all of that stuff, then we meet with them and figure out a great foundation on how we can move forward for the next few months.
Sounds like a plan. Okay, sounds good, Corinne. Thank you. All right, let's see what's up next. Adopt a Block. Any new news to talk about there, Julie?
No, I've gotten no calls.
We need to promote that again in the. We'll promote that again in the messenger and we've got that on the website too. See what we can gather there for that. Okay, last but not least tonight, we have new business. I do have some, first off, let me give everyone an update on what's happening with the Great Good Neighbor Agreement. Basically, it's done. And it's not ready for public, they're not ready to go public with it, but basically it's done. So one aspect of the Good Neighbor Agreement that was been in this Good Neighbor Agreement since the very beginning was the creation of a community advisory committee that would help to make decisions or try to it has a stated purpose of what it would be doing, and I can read that here in a second. And one of the requirements, or not requirements, but it allows for the neighborhood association to have a total of 3 representatives on this community advisory committee. And 2 of those, it also has the additional requirement that 2 of those members on this committee representing the neighborhood association live within a quarter mile or own a business within a quarter mile of the MSRV.
Moses, have you, sorry to interrupt, but have you confirmed that? Because it's my understanding that that was negotiated out of the Good Neighbor Agreement, the residency requirements.
Yeah, that's what Tony was saying.
Mhm.
And he's been leading point on this. So I'm just running with what Tony had shared with me as far as what those requirements are. So,
Yeah, it's my understanding that requirement is no longer there.
but it's my understanding that it is in there.
For what?
So this requirement that the 2 of those representatives on this community advisory committee live within a quarter mile of the SRV,
I'm within a quarter mile.
right? So I live within a quarter mile. You know. So they were at a point, right? They have been conducting the city of Portland, or the SRV team of the city has been conducting monthly stakeholder Zoom call meetings with for each of the SRVs that are out there, and specifically with Multnomah one, we've had one ongoing now for 6+ months. They wanted to change, they need to change the participants list in that stakeholder meeting so that it is for the community advisory committee members to participate on. So once a month, they would participate in this, what was the stakeholder meeting, but now would be the community advisory committee meeting for the MSRV. So it was brought to my attention as chair by Tony, who's been talking with Jake, Tony representing the Christian school, that they wanted to make that change in preparation for the public release of the GNA. But they needed to have the members of the community advisory committee lined up, have their contact information. So I needed to be able to have 3 representatives on that community advisory committee. So what I decided to do is I appointed temporary members to be on that meeting, on that committee. Those temporary members are myself, Chris Dirth, and Charmaine Yaslada, both of which were on the negotiating team for the Good Neighbor Agreement. They've agreed, and in accepting this, in asking them to be appointed as temporary members, I explained to them that we needed to have some placeholders, if you will, on that so that they could go forward, but that the final members of the committee would need to be interviewed and chosen, and then asked, and then reviewed those would then in turn need to be approved by the board. So the plan is, my plan is to reach out to appoint those temporary ones so that they can move forward. Chris, myself, and Charmaine. And then over the next 30 days, reach out to some members of the community that live within those 15, that quarter mile, for a permanent position on that committee, permanent members of that committee. So for instance, one of the first people I plan to ask is Kevin Davis. Kevin Davis lives with a quarter mile. He's one of the adjacent property owners. Good man, lawyer, very well respected. I want to make sure that I need to ask him formally and go through that process. Quite honestly, I was going to ask you, Will, if you would serve on that committee. And I'm kind of putting a little bit, I mentioned it because we are in a public forum right now, and I want to make sure you know what's going on. But I mentioned it also to put slightly a little bit of pressure for you to hopefully say yes to being on that committee. And then
let's see how it goes. I'll think about it.
Yeah, I'll share with you much more information as that goes. But the idea here is that I've got to make sure that the board reviews and sees, approves any permanent appointments. And those need to be approved by January at the earliest, the earliest. So by the board. So I have the temporary members in there in place. I have folks like Kevin Davis. I have my short list of folks that I want to ask to participate as permanent members on that advisory committee. And over the next 30 days, I plan to be able to, in preparation for the January board meeting, reach out to the short list and interview them and see if they would agree to the appointment. So at our January meeting, I will be presenting to our board members for their approval that list of permanent members for that advisory committee. Pardon me. And all of this is in preparation. And I'll share more information. I'll share the excerpts from the actual GNA as to the obligations that the neighborhood association has when it comes to this agreement. And this is one of those obligations, and that is to participate in this community advisory committee, to be able to facilitate communication between the city and the local neighbors as far as concerns, and to make sure that things are running smoothly and that concerns are being addressed. So that's where that stands. It's not really anything that we're voting on or tonight, but in preparation, though, I will be sending around for a vote in January at the January board meeting that short list that I was telling you about, and whether when they approve, when I have those three members. So can I answer any questions or share anything more about this with anyone?
I have a couple of questions, if you can. One is, who are the signatories on the Good Neighbor Agreement? It was us. Who represents city, county, that sort of thing?
I'm not sure exactly, but it's the JOHS is signing on to it. All Good Northwest would have to sign on to it. The city of Portland, West Hills, myself, the neighborhood association. There's others, but those are the big four.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And second is, when will we see the text?
As soon as I get the final,
We have the text.
Hey, Moses,
as soon as it's approved, for final.
if you give me sharing privileges, I can put on the screen the section from the Good Neighbor Agreement that addresses the committee, this Community Advisory Committee.
Yeah, here, just a second. Come on, how do you, am I doing this wrong here? I think I,
Maybe, I don't know. What do
oh,
you,
Will is doing it for me. Okay, there you go, Will. Well, okay, now you can screen share, Will, Peter. There we go.
okay, are you seeing the text now?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So this is the full section of the Good Neighbor Agreement dealing with this Community Advisory Committee. So 3 M&A reps, the representative from the operator, All Good Northwest, a representative, a participant who lives in the village, in the Safe Rest Village, West Hills Christian School, a member of Jake's SRV, the city SRV team, and joint office, the county.
And, while we're here, just to share this, and it's on the screen for us to read also, helping ensure that strong lines of communication are maintained between the city, the operator, and the community, ensure that commitments in the GNA are being upheld, identifying opportunities for greater collaboration among the parties that enhance the benefits of the SRV for village participants in the community, and identifying and developing solutions to any problems that are reoccurring that have not been adequately addressed through the problem-solving communication strategy from section 10. So,
And so this document, Moses, is where I would have expected to see the requirement about a residency within a quarter mile of the SRV, and I no longer.
Actually, that's under the section between the agreement between us and the M&A and the Christian school.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So
It's in a different section
also in a written agreement?
as part of the
All right,
overall
yes.
document.
Interesting. Okay.
So, yeah, that's where that stands. I have not been given anything official for public consumption, but it's appropriate for us to share this section because we're talking about it with the Community Advisory Committee in mind. So, as I say, this is all going to be coming down. I've got to get approval at the January board meeting of those representatives.
Moses, can I make a comment?
Sure.
Thank you. I think your plan is fine plan with the temporary and the permanent. I would ask in screening these folks, it's good that they're going to be within a quarter mile because they obviously have skin in the game, but they are supposed to be representatives of concerns. So they have to, I think it needs to be made clear to them that they are representing the neighborhood and the neighborhood association and not just their own personal interests, whichever direction, that goes. They're not just there as advocates for their own selves.
Right on.
I'm making that.
Makes sense. And one last thing that is there too is I noticed is that at the very end of that, what you just shared with us, Peter, I think there was like after 6 months, there's going to be a step back in an assessment of whether even the advisory committee needs to meet on a monthly basis anymore.
I think it was 3 months.
3 months.
After 3 months, it'll meet on an as needed basis.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily I mentioned that just because it's they'll be able to determine whether or not what the par view of that committee is going to be, basically. So and whether necessity of it even.
Hey,
But I think having said that, I think it's a very positive thing that we're at least at this point finally.
do you know, somewhere in the conversation swirling around recently, the Portland Police Bureau was mentioned as a stakeholder in this document, and they're not on that list, but are they a stakeholder?
As I understand it, yes.
Thank you.
Back to the GNA itself, however, I believe that the neighborhood association has to approve going into it. Do we have to have a vote of a general meeting? Yeah.
I understand that.
One of the particular issues has been, and I don't know if you're free to speak to it, whether there is a requirement for any sort of screening of residents or of participants, or is it still a low barrier SRV?
I can't comment on that right now
Okay.
until it's public. All right, so that's where that's at. And with any luck, knock on wood, this may also come up as something else that we have to vote upon at the January meeting. And in regards to that, right now, we've got already the board motion for January. Let me back up. Do we have anything else, any other questions about about that community advisory?
Yeah, let me just respond to Will. Will, it is a low barrier shelter facility, and it will remain that.
All righty, and then let's go to, okay, so it kind of our conversation on this relates to the the December agenda, next week's agenda. Okay. So I have the board motion that we put in on November. And that is, shall the M&A update their articles of incorporation? I have the board motion being introduced for January. Shall the M&A apply for 501c3 status? And maybe if it does time out, right? See, the GNA is going to be, gosh, I mean, technically we give it 1 week. Technically, it could be to us by the board meeting in January. And we push it out to the general membership for a vote in January. That would mean that we would, and I can't confirm that that's going to happen, but best case scenario, that's what's going to happen.
How long is it going to, any idea? Would it take a month for them to get the public announcement?
I'm not sure where it's honestly, well, so I can't answer that because I just don't know yet.
I was thinking was the reason.
That was a question that was asked to me 5 months ago, and I have to give the exact same answer that I gave back then. So, with any luck, you know.
Because
So
they say
if
it's
it does,
done.
so as a board, I'm just saying that, be prepared, that might be hitting us here too. And if that's hitting us here too, we've got to have a vote on it ASAP with the general membership. And it may even, yeah. Best case scenario, we have that vote in January as well.
Thinking what would happen is if we get word by the meeting next week, which would be great, then we say, here it is, and here's the text. We could give it a heads up that the GNA has passed muster with all of the participants. It has to come to us for approval. The very soonest we get the GNA, we'll send out an email blast and put it on the web page and the Facebook page that here it is, and people can discuss it in January and possibly vote on it.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to even. I'm kind of hesitant to take that approach, Will. I really am.
Yeah.
Because we don't know if that's going to be viable.
Yeah.
So even mentioning it on Friday is inappropriate. Next week is inappropriate unless it's publicly, unless we're allowed to.
Yeah,
And
sure, subject to whatever you can say. Just give people a heads up that there will be adequate notice so they can look it over. I honestly,
or not mention it at all and then just present it when it is approved. And we just via email communications and the website and the normal means instead of
when it's really also go to the press and everything like that at the same time. The sooner we do it, the sooner we don't get mail from people saying, why didn't you tell me? The press told me first.
I appreciate that, but if we follow that advice, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Well, let's see what we
I'm
got.
just saying, Will, I don't want to, I really do not want to talk about it on Friday if it's not a done deal.
Oh, no, it'll be on the next
Friday,
Tuesday.
but
Next Tuesday.
in-
I'm with it.
next week's
I'm happy with the having a release immediately as soon as it's public knowledge. That would be good enough, that we don't hold it any, and don't say anything until Christmas. It's a
I'd rather
surprise. You
not.
get to open your present. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Go ahead, Corinne. You have your hand up, Corinne.
Oh, yeah, I just agree with Will that as much transparency as we can offer and appropriate insight into what's coming, I think lends well to the public. I just think as much information as we can safely give. And then I also just want to put in a plug that I think is important that we prioritize the 501c3 with the timeline being tighter than I would have expected based on Peter's comment. And if we get this grant proposal, we're going to have to move really fast on that. So I just want to make sure that is, if we get it, we have to be able to move with our general public's approval on it quite quickly. But I do
Hey,
agree with Will's
you know,
statement on being transparent as possible.
You know, quite honestly, we could put the January board motion. We're 1 week ahead of the general meeting in December. We could have it included in December if we wanted to. So there would be 2 votes. There would be, shall they update their articles of incorporation and shall they apply for 501c3 status? And both of those questions would be answered at next week's meeting.
I
That's just
think
a thought.
whatever we can do to get ahead of it. Again, I'm glad that Tad's got his hand up because he knows more about whatever the bylaws are in the articles and all that stuff. But as long as we can use this meeting to move forward with this momentum that we have, let's do that. Yeah.
Tad, go ahead. Makes sense, Corinne.
On the language of the motion, I what I'm hearing is, shall we do this? Shall we do that? Shall we buy a new red refrigerator? And I can understand why you would want to use those words, but the proper form is the board moves to buy a red refrigerator, to which the body says yay or nay, rather than asking. It's not a question. It's a proposal to which they accept or decline.
That's how I talk to my toddlers.
I'm not, I want to say something, but I'm not going to say it. Okay, so we've got, that's a really good point. The board moves that the M&A update their articles of incorporation. Yes, they can, yes, no. The board moves that the M&A shall apply for C501c3 status.
Yes.
Okay, so my question is to everyone, do we move that, apply for, does the board motion relating to the 501c3 status, which we currently have being given 30-day notice and voting on in January, do we want to move it to the December ballot? To move that vote to the December general meeting, or do we want to stay with the original plan? I mean, is there just as coming up with an option to take Corinne's advice and to put this on the front burner?
What's the downside? I mean, we got money that, everything takes time. And we have to wait 30 days to have them vote. It seems, I don't see a downside in requesting
Did the members here last month or at some other time that efforts have actually already started to pursue 501c3?
Good question. Not really. I mean, we've been talking about it. We've created an ad hoc committee on it.
It's been under discussion with general members for several months, I think.
Okay. I'm not sure it makes much of a difference because, well, we know it's going to take, especially given that it's the holiday month, it's going to take more than a month. If we present next week the motion to pursue 501c3 and vote on it in January, well, there's nothing stopping us from actually working on it, whether we vote on it or not. but we'll be that much further ahead by the
Yeah.
time and of course, they're gonna say aye to that motion.
I tend to feel like January. Okay, perhaps I'm kind of feeling that the original plan should be what we do on that. And it doesn't mean that we can't be working in the background to help get this going, but I like the 30-day space. I like that 30-day allowance for discussion or, for any comments to come in. There's no disputing the transparency then.
Right.
You
It is
know,
a big
and-
deal.
Yeah, and same thing with the GNA. I mean, a part of me is saying 30-day, oh God, scrutiny, but part of me is saying 30-day scrutiny, vote yes or no on it, So, go ahead, Karen.
Would we want to split those up? Like, would we want, December to be focused to GNA or to 501c3 and vice versa, and have January focused to one or the other? So we're not trying to tackle both of those big voting decisions in 1 month. Would be one argument towards moving one to December, one to January.
Right. Well, the only thing is that we don't know. This is predicated on the GNA being approved and getting out there in time for a January vote. Anybody got a coin?
A thought would be that if they both come down in the meeting, we don't have anything like a speaker or something to divide attention. Again, I don't know how controversial, I think my guess the GNA would be more controversial than the 501c3 because it's been, okay, we finally have something. What does it do for us? But I don't know that. And I'd say we can handle both of them in January.
Okay.
But again, I'm okay with not announcing the GNA until we say whatever you say. They're going to want to know something about the GNA at the December meeting. How you phrase that is up to you. Yeah, you Moses.
I always put it, we'll put it under that GNA update section. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just get a little clarity on what the reservation is of bringing up the 501c3 in December? Is it just too soon? We
just
haven't talked about it enough.
none.
It's hasn't been okay.
I don't, not from a logistics standpoint, I have no concerns about doing it.
Okay.
It was just that I was worried we might be loading up a little bit, but so we have the option of putting both of those motions in December and focusing January on the GNA. Or keep it as is. And that GNA, so we'll have 2 votes. I think we can I would think that we'd be fine with the current situation of 30 days. I do like that. It's a big deal having to go to 501c3 status. And I like that 30-day transparency part of it.
The announcement isn't a vote. It's just a discussion time. People can talk about it then and think about it for 30 days and have another discussion. I don't think it's onerous and keeps it going. We are
I think
pretty clean on
GNA
it.
is to be the big deal. I mean,
Yeah.
Are we expecting some discussion of whether or not to pursue 501c3?
not really. I don't think we are. Peter, do you think we're going to get pushback on the 501c3 status? Changeover, any kind of a changeover to 501c3?
I don't think we'll get pushback.
Yeah.
So it's not likely to take any time in the
Right.
meeting.
Yeah.
Present the motion, vote on it, move on.
That's my thinking too.
Okay.
Okay.
All right,
I'll
let's just
play
move-
one more plug. I know logistically it might be challenging, but I have concern from the grant proposal standpoint of waiting until January to make that vote, to not have that decision in place from the M&A population. I would love to see it in December if it's feasible, and if the board would see it work that way, but I get the logistical challenge, but I have urgency on the grant proposal. And I guess we would know in theory come mid next week, maybe even a day or two afterwards if we don't get the grant, but I do feel like there's some pressure on the M&A to get that 501c3 status to actually get the money if we get approved for it. And when I submit the proposal, it was like, we're working towards this hopefully in the early new year, that I'd like to try to hold to that commitment that we put in place on the grant proposal and the request.
You know, Corinne, if we gave it an up or down vote next week at the general meeting, there would be nothing to prevent the appropriate committee or ad hoc committee or subcommittee to actually complete the 501c3 application, so that if it were fully approved on January 10th, then on the 11th, it could be submitted.
That's true. That's true.
And
Okay.
and it is, you know, it being December and all, it's going to take several weeks to complete, I think, even a fairly simple application.
That's true. I think I would just like to see some motion in the right direction around that time of the approval, because it was one of the biggest reservations on our application that we're not currently a 501c3. I mean,
Yep.
that's part of the application. It's okay to apply for it, but you should have good intentions towards it. So I think I'm sitting a little bit uneasy. And if we move with this path to wait until January, I'm hoping I can get some partnership from the board on moving quickly with it. If we wait until January, once we get membership approval, we move rapidly.
Mhm.
May I suggest?
That's
a
my
s-
hope. I think I'm just sitting a little uneasy. I guess if we get approved, they would probably give us, you know, maybe we don't even need to have it until I don't know when we would need the funds, when we start needing to buy supplies or something, but I think we would need to move somewhat rapidly. So I think I guess I'm just sitting a little uneasy.
I understand, it's some money,
Does
it's a
that make
big
sense?
deal.
Yeah, yeah.
May I suggest an alternative here? It's pretty
Mhm.
straightforward. When we get the grant, let's say,
Mhm.
there will be some kind of stipulation in the
Mhm.
process saying you must have your 501c3 by X
Mhm.
date.
Yeah.
If that is prior to having it, you have to have it right away. Or even if there's some other reason to do it more quickly, we can call a special meeting. Just a membership meeting, a special meeting to say,
Okay.
hey, we have the 501c, we have a grant contingent on getting it done rapidly. We'll have a special meeting on to pick a date, December 25th or something like that.
Okay. Does that sit okay with the board if we had to? Thank you, Will, for
It's actually not a
forecasting
bad
that.
idea
Does
at all.
that sit okay with?
Yeah.
Does that feel okay to our membership if we're making that big of a decision on a special meeting without doing it at a general member meeting?
I think we can get away with it as long as we're giving this 30-day notice, because it'll already be out in the public eye for discussion. And then we call a special meeting, give 2 weeks notice.
Okay.
Okay. I think we'd be okay with that. And then if we don't call a special meeting, we still have the vote on the 10th.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. As long as I have you guys ready to move with me quickly around the holidays,
you've
and if
got.
we get this, that we're gonna have to like, all right, we got to get our SH together to get this, so we can actually get the funding that we were approved for. Okay. Then I'm fine with
So-
sticking till January. Thank you
Right.
guys for talking that out with me.
Well, thank you for putting the pressure on us, Corinne, because, you know, that's right. Okay, so that's where that stands, folks. We're gonna go with the original plan here, predicated on any kind of a need for a calling of a special meeting for a vote on. Okay. Is there anything else that I've missed that we need to include in the general meeting for next week? Agenda for next week?
Just a reminder that Devin Hoyt, who's the communication
Ah.
manager for All Good Northwest, was going to come back to us this month with a report on the story that All Good overspent by $550,000 and what's up with that. I'm quite sure that they returned the money, that they have straightened that out, but The question was on the floor, and Devin did promise that she'd bring a report back to us.
Okay, and she's.
Comment by me,
so we can
the
count on
quicker
her
you
being-
can. You have to get the agenda out onto the webpage as soon as possible so people can see it would be nice. Bias. But so that we got it up there so people get a chance to look at it, because especially because there's some important items on it.
Well,
And we
is
can
there any
run
other items for the agenda? That's what we're talking about right now.
I don't know any others, the usual
Is
Devon.
anybody else? All right, sounds good. Well, let me get after the agenda so we can get it up there and as soon as possible, because we've got a lot of important issues that we have to discuss with the members. Sounds good. We're done. We're adjourned.
Great, because I have to
Yes,
leave.
sir.